Welcome to the Doggone It Trucking Podcast. Who do we have on the show this week? None other than Mr. Ed Novoa from Over the Road magazine. Let's get right to it. Welcome to the Doggone It Trucking Podcast. I'm your host, Chris Harris, Safety Dog. And when it comes to trucking safety, the dog is on it. Please, if you would show your appreciation for the podcast by leaving a thumbs up, a comment, a rating, it would help me so much raise the profile of this show and bring it and make it available to even more listeners. So thank you very much. I appreciate you and your time that takes. Now, let's get on with the show. Hey, Ed. Welcome
Hi.
to the Doggone It Trucking Podcast. How in the heck are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Chris. It's Friday.
It's Friday, and by the looks of it, you're sitting in your office, and it's sunny.
It's bright. It's not blue skies, but it is. The sun is shining through.
Wow. Hey, it's better than it has been for a long time.
Yeah, it's gorgeous this morning.
It was. Did you get out, we're in this COVID-19 self-isolation. Did you manage to get out for a walk or anything?
No, I did go to the grocery store.
That's an important thing to do on Friday.
Yeah, first time out in 2 weeks, so I'm doing my part.
Well, good. Now, for some reason, we broke up a little bit there, but tell me about Over the Road magazine, Over the Road group of companies.
All right. I have been with the company going on 21 years.
Really?
Yeah. And you were one of the first people I met in the industry.
For you. I'm surprised you're still here.
I wanted to leave immediately, but I couldn't. They say that once you get it in your blood, you can't get out, and that's the fact. I think the people that are in the industry, I've been at lots of different professional conferences, and I've met, I have a lot of friends who are in different industries, and I can tell you that trucking was, I think, tailor-made for my personality because of the honesty that people deal in and work in. I mean, not everybody's a little bit different, but overall, if you want an honest opinion, you ask a trucker and you'll get one. So it's right up my alley. So the company itself, 26 years in business, and the magazine has always been the flagship part of it. We are a group of companies now. We did a few years ago, we reconfigured things so that the group consisted of three main services. One was driver recruitment advertising that had the physical magazine, the digital services, and the Truckstop poster services that we market across Canada.
Okay, before you go on, what do you mean by digital services?
Everybody has to be online. So we still have the paper copy of the magazine, but we moved and put extra focus on having online subscriptions and using the different platforms that are available for, when I say digital, I mean anything that is on a computer screen, right? So just to generalize that word, but it means anything that's virtual. So we have the actual copy of the digital magazine where you can flip through the pages and look at the ads and follow the links. We have our actual website for the magazine that has some content for drivers looking for jobs and just industry updates. We publish your article in our magazine, the physical copy and the digital version, and it goes online, and you can see all the history of all your articles published on our overtheroad.ca website.
Yeah,
so,
and I thank you for that.
Well, you're a celebrity in our eyes. And so, And then extending the digital services would be the advent of the implementation of I guess mostly the Facebook community that we launched a while back with a very focused strategy that, sometimes one of the things about launching social media initiatives, you have to have a plan and you have to follow the plan, because you will want to go with the flavor of the month or the flavor of the week, because things change so quickly. Yeah. But you always have to remember, it's like following a business plan or a marketing plan. You always have to remember why you started what you're doing, and then you have to continue with your plan. You have to stay the course. Doesn't mean you can't modify it once in a while, but if you are constantly changing your message, then that's what your customers and your audience see.
Yeah, now
they see mixed messages, basically.
Tell me more about the Facebook group, or the OTR presence on Facebook, because until now, I didn't know anything about it.
Oh, well, you're clearly not our audience. No, we tried to make it. We could have. Actually, we made a couple of attempts individually over, I guess, somewhere around 2010 or 11, and then again somewhere around 2014, 2015, something like that. We made 2 attempts, but they were attempts that were unfounded, unguided, and it was a wish more. Hope is not a plan.
Right.
So just because you have a Facebook page doesn't mean that you are done the job. So I went to a course. It was put on by a company called IAB, I think, and they were a Google partner, and I learned all about the power of digital marketing, all the different facets of it. I got I got my certificate for doing it. So I took all that knowledge back, and then I did my own research. I put together a plan that, based on my research and knowledge, I put together a plan that focused on the trucking, our best interest to use the platform as it was intended, meaning not to commercialize it. It's a resource and building a community and trust and interactions with our users, because we want to reach out and communicate with them. And so that was the idea, and we got some help along the way with one of our partners, our business relationships from the US. There's a company called Work4, and I'm not giving away any trade secrets here. They have a database of drivers, truckers, people in the trucking industry that are verified that they are either a truck driver or work in the trucking industry. Okay. And it's not through trying to fool them or trick them or anything like that, because people volunteer information on Facebook and they get to choose what they make public and what they don't. So anybody who's interacting with Facebook gets put into a specific, for example, our community, we don't track that kind of information, but a lot of the community came from broadcasting on Workforce Network, and we have, comparing the interaction stats, our interaction with our users is 2 or 3 times the industry average, because when we post something, we post it that's got to be meaningful and not just for the sake of having information. So I work with someone, a part-time, I'll call him a social media expert, and we develop a plan. We have a weekly content schedule, and then we have random, particularly these days with how we need to keep people informed on what's going on with the regulations and with things related to COVID-19. We post random reposts, reshares of topical data or topical information, and then we have our regular, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday postings.
Right.
And we've been doing that for a couple of years. So we feel our community strong. It is growing organically. And so that's all because of the plan that was originally initiated, and we stayed the course.
Well, now I've pulled it up on my computer, and I knew how to use this darn software better. I'd share it, but I'll put a link in the show notes below. I know on my Facebook page, I believe I'm less than 200 likes. I just put yours up. You're after this, I'm sure you'll be over 1,500 likes, but you're at 1,498 likes. You're 2 likes away from 1,500.
Yeah.
Which is pretty darn impressive. And I said I didn't know about it. I guess I did because I see that I've liked the page. But I probably liked it so long ago and I've never interacted with it. What a shame, because I do see there's just a ton of content here for our listeners. And I will put some of this into I'll cut and paste when I'll do a slight edit. I'll put some of the road stuff here from Facebook on there. But,
thank you.
Yeah,
thank you.
We got to talk offline about how you did this, Ed, because I'm interested.
I'd be happy to guide you along, Chris, and anybody else listening. If you need some guidance, I can set you on the path. I strongly believe that you can bring a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. So I will empower you with the tools and the knowledge, the fundamentals of how to set up a plan, what kind of things you think about, because I don't know your business like you do. So you know what is successful and what isn't. So I can help you determine scheduling for content and frequency.
Yeah. This would be a neat topic, I think, for a podcast.
Yeah.
How Ed can walk trucking companies through using social media.
Yep.
So listeners, if Ed would be up for that would be a future interview.
Yeah, they just got to put the likes. Chris, I'm happy to talk to you anytime. It's fine. It's fine. I'm happy to share my knowledge. I think that.
Well, is this something that
we can have more
does?
It's something that we're venturing along, but you can appreciate that having this kind of skill and knowledge is not something that you can acquire overnight. Right? You have to pay attention. You have to, because a lot of it. Picture it this way. I started working with trucking companies based on their print advertising. We're hiring drivers. This is what we pay. This is where to contact us. This is even before most trucking companies had websites. Right. Well, most people were faxing their...
20 years ago was a long time.
Yeah. So keeping all that data and all the hundreds of clients or companies that I've worked with over the years, and then watching how the media space has changed from print and graduated to different forms of print, and then graduated again to touching online, and then so on. And now we are using the least amount of paper I think we've ever used.
Right.
As an industry and as a society, we're using far less paper than we ever have. So paperless is important, and you don't have to wait for paper. Digital is instantaneous. We live in an instant gratification society. So knowing all that, but also understanding the truckers' minds and what the things that they like, the things that attract them, the demographics of the drivers, all those things are learned over time, and you have to actually observe and take interest in what it is rather than reading a book and saying, this is what you should do. Of course, you should understand and study theories on how to do certain plans, how to set up plans. You should absolutely do that, but you have to apply your own knowledge and experience to it so that it makes it more real. a lot of people, especially in trucking, will be able to see right through a canned sales speech, right? So you got to tailor everything individually, and so you get back to your question. Yes, Over the Road is working on developing a program like that. It just takes very, very careful planning, because I could easily say to you, "Hey, Chris, let me set up a Facebook page for you."
Well, I've got one, but it doesn't.
It's
not reaching my audience very well.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, that's just a general statement. Let me set up a Facebook page for you, but I don't ask any questions. I just say, okay, I've set one up for you. Good luck. You got to know, I got to manage your expectations, and I have to understand your expectations. You have to clearly understand what I'm going to provide for you. And that all requires very methodical planning.
It's an interesting. Everybody needs social media today. Every trucking company needs to be reaching out. I think you and I were listening to a the TCA webinar. And one of the things that I took out of it, we're in the midst, as we tape this, of our COVID-19 crisis. And one of the things they said there is you've got to reach out and communicate with the drivers. And they were quite clear that they didn't think communicating at this time was social media. They said pick up the phone and talk one-on-one with as many drivers as humanly possible. And I think that during this crisis is critical.
Yep. In
normal times, when I hope a lot of people will be listening and watching to this, social media is critical, and that's where, especially I think Facebook and for truck drivers is probably the medium that is best suited for recruiting and retaining your drivers. Does
I agree.
Over the Road have a product that you would be selling in order to train or help develop retention and recruiting on social media, specifically Facebook?
Nothing that I would say. Nothing that I would market. Let's put it that way.
Okay.
I think one of the strengths of our organization is the belief that each client is different, and that's, how many companies, how many businesses say that?
Right.
Every company matters. Every customer is different. I will say to you that every individual company, and a company could be one person. Different plans. So I heard a beep.
Yeah, we lost connection for just a minute, but we're back again.
Okay. I was saying that every plan has to be individualized, so that's why it's not something that I'm prepared to market at the moment, because like I said earlier about those kinds of services, it requires very specific type of planning. It's not as simple as saying, would you like to run an ad in the magazine? Because on the internet, once it's there, unless you have very specific and specialized scrubbing software, it's there forever.
Yes.
So you have to be very careful.
For most of us, it's there forever.
But you asked a question about how we can help on social media, but the other part, because we'll rewind back to the original question about Over the Road and the group companies, what services we offer. We are also, a lot of your listeners, and a lot of people now, I hope, are aware that we are partnered with a company called Vertical Alliance out of Texarkana, Texas, and also now an office in Dallas, Texas. They are an online training platform.
Right. This is where you do most of your work, isn't it?
Yeah, I started doing my work about halfway through 2012. We've been their Canadian partners since about 2009, 2010. And I came on board to try to develop the business about midway through about 2012, because that's when I moved out of Toronto into Brampton. I don't live there now, but I did for 3 years that's why I know I can marry it up to that timeline. So what this, and particularly right now, I'm glad we get a chance to talk about this, is they decided about 2 weeks ago, and if you saw my post on LinkedIn, they decided that in order to help trucking companies communicate with their most people working from home now and the drivers out on the road, and help with quicker orientation with less face-to-face contact, which is a requirement now, they are offering their platform complimentary for 30 days for any trucking company that wants to use it.
Right. And you said that we can put the link in the show notes below. So
yeah,
point to below. So
yeah.
And I say link, it may be just contacting you, right? To get authorization or authority, whatever you call it.
Yeah, and I think it's not so much about authorization or qualification. It's to set the one thing that I absolutely try to never let happen is if a company subscribes for a service without knowing what they're subscribing for,
right,
or subscribing to, then they don't end up using it, and then they get frustrated, and then you've lost a customer for life. So
they need to talk to you to understand, because I've used Vertical or Infinit-i for a bit. There is a learning curve to it, not substantial, but it's different software.
It is different software, but the capabilities, I like to understand what a company wants to achieve, what they hope to achieve. That way I can go into it with a plan already in mind and help them in the setup process so that exactly what they want to achieve is because it's a 30-day window, right? So I want to make sure that exactly what they want is going to happen. And then once it ends, they can decide whether they want to become a paying customer or they just go on their merry way. It's no obligation. And that's why I posted it on LinkedIn, because I've always believed that, and I learned this through Peter Charbonneau, is that if you give good service, good genuine service, you will get business. And it might take a little while longer, but that customer is going to stay there a lot longer.
So just to reiterate, your contact info is below. If somebody wants to take advantage of this 30-day window for better communication with their drivers, they should reach out to you.
Yeah, we've got a bunch of resources on COVID-19. That's the main reason for it. Yeah. Be able to keep your drivers educated on what's going on. And I don't want to make this a sales pitch, but there's a lot of value to it, and there's certainly a lot of merit to it right now.
Right. Now, you mentioned a name that not all of our listeners may know, Peter Charbonneau. Mm-hmm. Who in the heck is that?
He started the company in 1994 with a company called Ramp Publishing out of Atlanta. There was a gentleman by the name of Marvin Shevsky, and I can't remember, he had a business partner. I can't think of the gentleman's name. He's a lawyer anyway. Right. And they came up to Canada and they decided they were going to start publishing in Canada. They connected with Peter in some fashion that maybe Peter will tell you the story one day, but after that, they did not have a proper strategy for doing business in Canada. That's why we tend to be partners for U.S. companies, because we understand the Canadian market, and particularly the price, the tolerance for costs in Canada is very different from the U.S. just simply for the exchange rate alone. So they were going to pull out, but Peter said, "No, I'll take the business over if you'll, if we can negotiate something reasonable." They did, and he ran the business for 5 years on his own and built it to a stable, profitable publication, but it was just a one-man operation. And so we got connected because I was taking marketing and advertising at a college near where his office was. So we got connected, and then that's when I started working for him in 1999. It was 1999, because that's the year before I graduated.
And here it is in 2020. So you misspoke when you said you've only worked for Over the Road for 20 years. It's really 21.
No, I said I'm going on 21.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I think it's May 30th. Yeah, May 30th, I think, will be 21. I think I was hired on May 30th.
Well, cool. So the Over the Road group, they've got the print magazine, the online magazine, and Infinit-i. Are those the three main legs of the group?
Yes, those are the three main legs. The one that not a lot of people know about, which I alluded to earlier, is the Truckstop distribution network that we have, because we partner with Pilot Flying J, Rand O'Reilly, and a company called U.S. Field Service out of the U.S., and we help them. We have people all over the country who go to the different truck stops and do distribution for our publication and one or two others. And we have poster display, the large format posters. We have those as part of our agreement with Pilot Flying J. We have them in those corporate stores, along with some other truck stops across the country. And we audit the cat scales and the trip pack services in Canada.
Sorry, what do you mean audit?
Cat scale, you familiar with cat scale?
Yeah, you can go there and weigh your truck and load.
Yeah. So they have some marketing on site that they, by corporate rule, have to have on site, and it has to be clean and clear, and it has to be current. So we just make sure that everything is properly stocked and clean and operational, and then we do the same thing for trip pack.
Okay, see, all these things, I learn something every time.
Yeah.
Let's talk about, we're doing this show in the middle of COVID-19. The day that we're taping it is April the 3rd or 4th. What is it? The 3rd. Most of us are locked in our homes at the time. Like you, going out to the grocery store once every 2 weeks, I hope.
Yeah.
But truck drivers, and God bless them, are on the road. Many warehouse people are working diligently, and our food store people are working. And of course, our whole healthcare industry is working quite hard and under stress at the moment.
Yeah.
What do you see in the future? And we don't know when this might end, but just out of curiosity and to get away from work a little bit. Mm-hmm. But what do you see as, or when I say get away from work, I'm saying getting off over the road topic, what do you see for the world going ahead when we do step out of this COVID umbrella? Just interested in everybody's got an opinion, and mine is exclusively mine and does not reflect the opinions of Over the Road or Over the Road group of companies. Disclaimer.
I thought I would throw that in there now. First of all, Chris, I think that the appreciation for the frontline workers, like, it needs to be front and center once this thing is all said and done. In the grocery store this morning, I thanked every grocery store worker that I walked by. Yep. And I told the cashier that I hope everybody there gets an award after the fact. And they're thankful and stuff, but I couldn't imagine having to. I mean, if I had to, I would, of course. But I think that we see that at the moment, the people who are keeping us in operation, I guess is the term. So, not to be disrespectful to anybody, but I mean, where the professional athletes, what value do they bring to the table right now? What celebrities, what value do they bring to the table right now? It's the people that are on the front lines, the drivers, the grocery store, the dock workers, the nurses' aides, everybody who is helping us maintain some way of having a normal life, thanks to their work. So I think coming out of this, I think humanity will realize that the things that they had the biggest interest in before really didn't matter that much. And I think, sorry, I don't want to cut you off, but this one thing, more point I want to make.
Yes, you get the mic. I'm supposed to be quiet.
I think that we are, our society is a consumer society, and by extension, I mean, definition of consumption is we're consuming materials, therefore material world. And it is a materialistic society that focuses on things, not people, or not intellect. And this is just a sweeping statement, because we're talking about how we're going to come out on the other side of this. I think that our society is going to be less materialistic and more focused on what is really important in life, which I have opinions on too, but you go ahead.
Well, no, I just on that webinar that we were on, of course, it's TCA, which is Truckload Carriers webinar. Mm-hmm. And if you are listening to this and we're still in the COVID-19 crisis, Truckload Carriers is allowing everybody who's interested to join their webinars. So, great kudos to them. You don't have to be a member of Truckload Carrier. But the thing that struck me there, and I guess because I'm in the industry, sometimes I forget that truck drivers are no longer considered the white knights of the road. When I drove back when we had donkeys and stuff, we were the white knights of the road. We were the ones that pulled over and changed a flat tire, because when I drove, it was pretty much before cell phones. Yeah. And one of the comments that the presenter at TCA made was, we've raised the profile of trucking again, and maybe we'll get back to that. And I hope our listeners and the general world don't forget the integral part that many people, not just truck drivers, but the warehouse workers, and as you said, the food people, or the people in the food stores. Everybody does recognize, I hope, the great contribution that the first responders, the nurses, the doctors, the hospital people, the old age home, retirement workers, all those people. Yep. But sometimes they forget that lonely truck driver and that warehouse person that's pushing the food around so it can get to the store. I hope it just raises the profile, and I wish more people would be like you and just, while we're in this COVID-19 thing, just say thank you to some of these people and be appreciative.
Yeah, I think it's fundamentally important. But going back to your, will it raise the profile? I think yes, it will permanently raise the profile of transportation, because can tell you that I have a very broad, so I'm a single guy and I've never been married, no kids. So I have a lot of time to educate myself and expand networks, and not always about business, but just personal networks that I get the ability to develop good relationships with things that people that have the same interests as myself. And I've met people in lots of different industries and walks of life. And what I find most interesting is the stigma, because when you work in trucking, and we know this, but maybe not all listeners are aware of this, when you work in trucking, you know what trucking is. You know what the drivers are like. You know what the trucking companies, how they operate. Sometimes dispatch is a little louder, but and maybe in the shop things are a little bit louder, but it all works. It's all one unit that works in that way. But the misinformation for the general public, the people not exposed to trucking at all, they have a very incorrect view of what drivers are. The personality of drivers, the I'm going to say wearing leather jackets and tattoos, and just ridiculous stigmas, and their image of drivers, thanks to me, has changed, because I fight back. I say you have the absolute wrong view of what a truck driver is. Yeah. So that, I think, if you wanted an idea for a topic, if you could find small segments, the dog speaks to driver, Jimmy, and then driver Sally, and just 5-10 minute snippets of a conversation with them. You get to know the people behind. One of the things that I had the luxury of as well was in working with Over the Road. I spent about a 6 or 7 year period where I interviewed and wrote articles on, you would remember, of course, Highland Transport.
Yes.
So they decided that they wanted to run a monthly segment on profiling an owner-operator in their company. Yeah. And so I'd drive out to wherever truck stop they were going to be at, and usually along the 401, and I'd sit with them, buy them coffee or buy them lunch or whatever, buy them dinner, and sit and discuss their lifestyle, their work, and them as people. So I got to learn a lot about trucking and the amount of stress that owner-operators experience. I think if I were to throw a number out, say I interviewed, I'll say 25 different owner-operators, 20 of them had heart attacks. Wow. And they weren't, and I don't think any of the ones I met in person and interviewed were overweight or looked unhealthy. Most of them were quite, obviously not in a suit and tie, but collared shirt, presentable and professional. It was not the unhealthy lifestyle, it was the amount of stress that got them to that unhealthy point where they've had, and not just one heart attack, we're talking multiple heart attacks. Yeah.
I mean, you've given me a great idea. I think it would be fun to go out and do some short, brief interviews with truck drivers. I think that might be something we do in the future.
Ed, anything else you want to share with the listeners before we wrap it up? I want to be respectful of your time.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, actually, you know what? When we talk, it just flies by. Anything else I want to say to the listener? No, I think, stay the course. There is one website that we'll put under here after, and it's a mental health support line for drivers that Chris Henry mentioned in the 2CA thing, and you can communicate with this line. In Canada, it's supported by Kids Help Phone, but it's a texting service that if you're having, I know that the anxiety levels are so high with drivers, but other people as well, but you can text and a professional counselor will work with you via text, because that's how a lot of people like to communicate these days. So
you're going to give me that info for the show notes?
Yeah, please. Yeah, if you can do that. And otherwise, I hope that everybody just handles the situation we're in. I hope they handle it well. And, remember that the people that are helping you are doing it because it's their job and they love to help people. You can't set your own selfish expectations on them because you're not being served fast enough, because you're waiting too long, whatever the reason is. We're all in this together, so don't put your needs before theirs.
Well, that was well said. I'll just throw on there, and please say thank you to all these.
Yes, absolutely.
Great. Thanks, Ed, so much for being on the show.
You're welcome, Chris. Thanks for having me.
I hope you loved the show as much as I did. Please leave us a like, a thumbs up, a review, a comment, a rating if it is in your heart. Thank you so much. And I do really appreciate your time. And join us again next week for another exciting interview.